And do people know the story behind the song, I Dreamed of Rain? Okay, so the song is written by Jan Garrett in conjunction with her husband, J.D. Martin. And they live in or near Loveland, Colorado. And back in 2002, there were wildfires, not dissimilar to right now. There were wildfires raging everywhere. And smoke getting into even into disturbing people's what they needed to do. So she fell asleep and had a dream about rain. And shortly after that, it actually rained. A year later, she woke up one day with the beginning of this song. And at that time, we were engaged in a war in Iraq. And she very much wanted it to be about rain, but she also wanted it to be about peace. And her song angels came to her and said, put everything you got in the song. Don't worry about making it rhyme, just do it. In 2006, the song was up for a New Thought Music Award that was being held in Phoenix. When they got to Phoenix, it was 110. No clouds in the sky. So they were invited to play the song. People didn't want to stop singing the song, so they repeated the chorus as long as they felt that energy. And then somebody from the back of the room ran in and said, guess what? It's raining. And it wasn't just sprinkling, it was raining cats and dogs. Oh my God. And guess what? They won the award for the best song. So what they said was every single time they play that song, it doesn't always rain, but more often than not, it rains. Wow. So keep that in mind. It's a good example of how powerful our consciousness is when it connects with spirit and puts out into the world that vibration that would have come back to us, blessings for everyone. And I think the more broadly the blessing, the more powerful the response from spirit. Because I do believe that spirit loves it when we tune into it, or them, or they, and have with our blessings for the world. So today we're going to talk about demystifying the mystical. And I want you to pay close attention because we're going to have a pop quiz at the end. But before we can demystify, we have to mystify, right? So we're going to mystify things. There, now wasn't there a movie, Spray Misty for Me? Okay. Seriously though, what is a mystic? Now, my understanding of that term is that it's a person who seeks a direct personal experience of the divine, of ultimate reality, or spiritual truth. And philosopher William James puts it this way: in mystic states, we both become one with the absolute and we become aware of our oneness. So who among here is a mystic? Don't be bashful, because I believe that's all of us. Yes. And if that tickles your fancy, you're not just a mystic, you're a mystical. But what does mysticism mean? The experience of mystical union or direct communion with ultimate reality. And so I would add not just the experience, but our openness to those experiences, so that it is our openness, I think, which creates the channel, which brings those into our reality. And like every relationship, it takes two to tango. What I've known with spirit is always available, but I'm not always available. So it's on me to remember to do my best to make that connection. So, do we have to be in a deep meditation to experience this mysticism? Anybody? Do we have to be in a deep meditation state? No. Okay. So, here's a what were you doing, or where were you when you had what you think might be a mystical experience? And you can just call them out. Yeah. Safeway, we just heard about that. That's a great place to have a mystical experience, especially if you're Reverend Nancy. Kathy? On the bus. All right. On the plane. Anybody else? Walking around a fair. Ooh, hiking in Big Sur, or anywhere out in nature that's a place that moves us. Anybody?
In the theater.
In the theater. All right. Anywhere else? Walking anywhere. Sunset and a lake, dancing. On the phone. Looking at a loved one, in this case, your son. All right. I've heard people talk about being present at the birth of a baby and how that's a mystical experience. One time I was holding vigil, which is something that practitioners do at Centers for Spiritual Living. We would be in a meditative state, holding the consciousness during the service and blessing everyone in the room with our energy. And one time when I was doing it, I had this sense of angels, hundreds and hundreds of wispy, cotton candy type angels hovering near the ceiling over the entire congregation and just shining down love and blessing. According to James R. Home, mystical illumination is a central visionary experience. And this can result in answers to personal or religious questions, but it doesn't have to. It can just be a strong, powerful sense of our oneness. So I want to talk a little bit about the different mystical people that we may or may not have heard of from the different faith traditions, because I do believe that every faith tradition has its mystics and its mystical branch. And when I was researching this, I found that there was quite an overlap between the Christian mystics and what I would call the New Thought or the metaphysical mystics. So when you think of those, anybody come to mind as far as a well-known mystic that you might have come across along the way? Mother Teresa, okay. Any others? Bernadette. Okay, I'm not familiar with her, but you can tell her. Okay, and that was the healing place? Okay, now I mentioned Meister Eckhart earlier. He's the one of the thank you prayer. He was German. I think he lived in the 1300s, and a lot of his ideas were way ahead of his time. He was very metaphysical. If you want to learn more about the mystics, Matthew Fox is a great resource on that. But one of my favorite mystics, and I had never heard of her, and it was a book I believe I picked up here in our library, is Agnes Sanford. Anybody heard of Agnes? And she lived, I think she died in the 80s, so she lived in the, recently. And she was Episcopal, but she really saw God as light and got into the laying of hands and was a very healing presence. She taught prayer in 5 steps that are very similar to the Science of Mind spiritual treatment. And she just talked about, she did a ministry with sick children, and she would tell them to visualize themselves running around, playing games, doing their life, even if they were sick in bed. And she would pray with them. And she had a lot of amazing success. And one of the interesting things about her is that she is one of the contemporary saints included in the mural in the rotunda at an Episcopal church in San Francisco called St. Gregory of Nyssa. And they have a painting, they have this huge dome, and around the dome are 90 12-foot saints. And they are being led by Jesus, who is famous in that song, The Lord of the Dance. And they are all dancing. They're holding one another, and they've got a foot up in the air like that, and they're dancing together. There's Gandhi, there's Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, John Coltrane, and sure enough, Agnes Sanford. So if you ever get over to San Francisco, check it out. In Judaism, there's the Kabbalah. I believe that's the tree of life. Has anybody heard of Martin Buber of I and Thou fame? And this is about experiencing the divine through intimate connections with people and nature. And the I and Thou is contrasted with I and it, because during his time, there's, even back then, starting to be way more focus on, way too much focus on gadgets and things, as opposed to connections, heart-to-heart connections with people and with God. How about Abraham Heschel? Anybody familiar with him? He was marched alongside all the marches with Martin Luther King Jr. He was a rabbi. He was considered a mystic and has written many, many books. And now we come to Buddhism. Anybody have a favorite Buddhist mystic? Thich Nhat Hanh. One of my favorite things that he said was, walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. And how about the Dalai Lama? All right. Who has written books, which I recommend, and so has Thich Nhat Hanh, and has said a lot of wise things. Amma. I'm just getting to Hinduism, and I don't know if she kind of defies categorization. But people familiar with Amma? Has anybody gotten a hug from her? All right. She just emanates unconditional love and acceptance. She just radiates it. And that has so animated her being that she'll sit there and take hugs for like 24 hours at a time without getting up. It's just amazing. And she also has a hospital, so we know there's some healing energy there. I want to lift up Swami Vivekananda because he was connected with the Rick sisters, who are the ones that founded the Home of Truth centers, of which we are perhaps the last remaining one. And also Swami Beyondananda. Are people familiar with Swami Beyondananda? Well, he's the one that says, may the farce be with you, and many other humorous saying. He brings humor and also a spirit of activism to his spirituality. You can get on his mailing list and get a daily laugh-sative in the email. Then oh yes, Yogananda, who brought a lot of the mystical teachings from India to the United States, played a really key role there. One of the things that Vivekananda said was, I do not come to teach you a new belief. I want you to keep your own belief. If you're Christian, stay a Christian. If you're a Methodist, stay a Methodist. But I want to teach you to live the truth, to reveal the light within your own soul. All right. Native American shamanism, there's probably way too many for me to name very many of them now, but I looked up and found, new to me, Daganawida, the great peacemaker, who brought the fighting Iroquois nations together and formed one united group. And they had some traditions of the way they did that, such that some of them were adopted into the US Constitution. When we get to Islam, we've got Sufism and our poets that we love to quote, Rumi and Hafiz. All right. So now, having demystified mysticism a little bit, let's demystify our home of truth spiritual principles so we can better live and embody them. So I'm going to invite Randall to put them back up on the screen. And Kathy, I'm going to invite you to share these index cards. Take one or two. Get our principles up there. So this month, our theme at the Home of Truth is embodying spiritual principles. And we chose this theme quite consciously because for the concepts to work in our lives, we need to do more than just repeat them and recite them, though we will do that. And we'll do that today. But it also means embodying them means not just learning about them and living them to the best of our abilities, but actually taking them into the core of our being and embracing them there so they can guide us from that place deep inside us where God lives with a little practice and a lot of willingness. Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't really know it. In other words, eschew obfuscation, right? So we're going to kiss them. Anybody know what kiss means? Kiss, keep it simple, sweetie. Okay, so we're going to start with our first principle. It's up there. Let's read it together. God, infinite intelligence, divine consciousness, is supreme, universal, and everlasting. Now, when I was in the Centers for Spiritual Living, they had somewhere between 10 and 12 of these. And so what I did was I matched up each one of ours with one of theirs that came the closest in corresponding, just to give you a contrast in how these things might be worded. Now, keep in mind, Dr. Holmes wrote this in the 20s and the 30s, but the corresponding principle was, we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existing cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. Got that? Right. So I'm a word person, so it grew on me, but it was more the rhythm of the words and less about what the heck does it mean. So because it doesn't just roll off the tongue unless you've memorized it, it's not very practical for keeping that in mind, going through life and trying to call that up at will. So I want to get back to our 10-word version, which is up there. That the divine consciousness is supreme, universal, and everlasting. And for us each to take that into our own understanding, we're going to do a little process that's going to end up with an affirmation. So first of all, take a look at that, number one, and call out any words that either pop out to you or come to mind when you look at that or hear it. Oneness. Anything else? Forever. Okay, and we've got intelligence, consciousness, divine, everlasting. So exactly. So there's an opportunity, and that's why I passed out the index cards, to create a short, easy way to remember this. And I've got some examples. One I like to say is, and don't worry that the short thing includes every single concept there, because that may be hard to do. But how about, there is no spot where God is not? or God is all there is, or God is and all is well. God is all powerful. God is all that and a bag of chips. It's all divine consciousness. All right, so while we're talking here, I'm going to invite you to write down anything that occurs to you, and at the end we'll share some of them. All right. The next one is number 2. You can please say it along with me. We are each an individual expression of this one power, which manifests uniquely through each being. And Ernest Holmes' version of that is, we believe in the individualization of the spirit in us, and that all people are individualizations of the one spirit. So what words pop out from that? Individual, one power, uniqueness, reflection, and I've got, we are all unique divine expressions. God expresses uniquely through everyone. God expresses uniquely through me. God expresses uniquely through you. In fact, I'd like you to turn to somebody and say, God expresses uniquely through you. So please turn to somebody. God expresses uniquely through you. And now put your hand on your heart. God expresses uniquely through me. God expresses uniquely through me. All right. Number 3, the highest spiritual principle is having a personal connection. And I'm inviting you to read this along with me because there's power in saying the stuff out loud. The highest spiritual principle is having a personal connection with the God of our understanding, which guides us in loving ourselves and others unconditionally. Okay, there's a lot going on in here. Now, Ernest Holmes, the closest one I could find was, we believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. Similar but not the same, because he doesn't mention love, but he does remind us that we are empowered to have that direct connection with God. We don't need a minister or a priest or somebody to be the go-between. We can do that ourselves. So what words come to mind here? What pops out? Anybody? Ooh, I love that. That's a good affirmation. Inner voice. And unconditional love. What I came up with was connect with the divine and be guided in love. So I turned that into, I connect with my divinity and am guided in love. So I'd like you all to say that with me, please. I connect with my divinity and am guided in love. And the last one, our mental states are carried forward into manifestation and become our experience in daily living, including prayer and other spiritual practices. And I would like to remind us that creating and reciting affirmations is a spiritual practice. And this is what Ernest Holmes came up with that was the most closely corresponding. We believe, and this is about the law of manifestation, so pay attention. Don't forget there's a quiz at the end. We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thoughts and acts upon it. Okay? Mental states manifest. What words pop out? Transformation. Has anybody heard this one? Change your thinking, change your life. And who was it that said, I think, therefore I am? Descartes. And who was it who said, I stink, therefore I am? That would be Descartes. All right, but what affirmations can we make from number 4 here? How about I co-create with God? Or you co-create with God? My consciousness makes a difference. I borrowed that from Reverend Mawata because the motto for San Francisco Center for Spiritual Living is, your consciousness makes a difference. So please say this with me, my consciousness makes a difference. Okay. So we're gonna review these affirmations. I'm gonna share the ones I've selected, and then if anybody would like to come up and share some of theirs, we'll do that, and then we'll pray out. So here we go. Mine are: divine consciousness is all powerful. It expresses uniquely through me. I connect with my divinity and am guided in love. I co-create with the divine all the time. All right, is there anybody who would like to share one or more of theirs? Anybody? All right, do you want to use the mic?
You'll have to tell me if they're right or wrong, Marilyn.
There's no wrong.
Okay. Everything is sacred. Everyone is sacred. We all carry the light. God's heart is my heart. My eyes are the eyes of God. My light shines. We co-create with the sacred.
Nice.
All right, let's give some love to Kathy.
Yes, Kathy.
All right, does anybody else like to share? Anybody? All right, well, we can share these over fellowship. That's fine. All right, now there's one more thing we need to do before I give us a little quick pray out. And that is, oh, Barbara, I'm sorry. We need you to come up to the mic. And we need you to hold it close so the folks online can hear you.
I'm going to stand right the way I was when manifestation happened. Okay. That's not where I was standing when it happened. This was probably 10, 20 years ago when we had one of the 3 a.m. World Day of Prayer. And I and about 6 or 8 other people were there in a circle. And as I stood, the whole room was filled with spirits. They were there. I had the feeling that these were people who had been here, who connected with this, and were coming back to share it. It was one of the most mystical, spiritual things I've ever experienced, and it was right here.
Thank you, Barbara. Did I miss anybody else? All right. Okay, one more thing we're going to do. I'm going to count to 3, and I want you to call out the first name of your father or your grandfather. 1, 2, 3. Marvin. All right, you all passed the pop quiz with flying colors. Let us take this into prayer. Oh, Holy, Holy Spirit, we've had fun today. We've learned something, hopefully. We've taken your words and translated them into words that speak from our hearts. And having done that, we can take them with us wherever we go, because they're short and sweet and snappy. And that's what we need our spirit to be sometimes when life gets tough. And we can't rely on a 51 word long affirmation to remember all the causations and all the ins and outs of how this manifestation thing works. We need it sometimes at our fingertips. And thank you, God, for being right there at our fingertips. And thank you, Home of Truth, for being willing to play along with me and to create affirmations for yourselves. If anything I've said has touched you today, please join me in saying thank you.
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Ashe,
Ashe.
and so it is.
And so it is.